You are drawn to this moment because your consciousness is vibrating at a frequency that's about to unlock something extraordinary. There's an invisible force guiding your attention right now, the same force that's been orchestrating every synchronicity, every unexplained knowing, every moment when time seemed to stop and reality felt more fluid than solid. You're not here by chance. You're here because you're on the verge of activating quantum coherence. Right now, as these words reach your awareness, your nervous system is responding to information that exists beyond the ordinary spectrum of human perception. You can feel it, can't you? That electric sensation behind your sternum, that subtle shift in your breathing, that sense that something inside you is recognizing a truth you've been searching for without even knowing what you were looking for. What you're experiencing isn't just intellectual understanding. What you're experiencing is your quantum field beginning to align with universal intelligence in real time. Every cell in your body is responding to frequencies that most people's consciousness isn't refined enough to detect yet. But you're different. You've always been different. You've always been sensitive to energies that others dismiss as imagination. The reason you've felt so out of place in ordinary reality, the reason conventional approaches to success and happiness have never quite worked for you, the reason you've been searching for something deeper, something more authentic, something more aligned with who you really are, it's because your consciousness was designed to operate at a level that transcends the limitations most people accept as normal. But here's what's happening right now that makes this moment unlike any other in human history. The electromagnetic field of our planet is fluctuating in ways that create unprecedented opportunities for consciousness expansion. The Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of Earth itself, is producing frequencies that act as a catalyst for quantum coherence activation in individuals whose awareness has reached a specific threshold of development. And you, watching this right now, receiving this information with every fiber of your being lighting up in recognition, you are one of those individuals. Your DNA is literally restructuring itself to accommodate higher dimensional information. Your neural pathways are rewiring to process data directly from the quantum field. Your pineal gland is decalcifying to become a more sophisticated receiver of non-local intelligence. This isn't metaphor. This isn't wishful thinking. This is quantum mechanics operating at the level of human consciousness. And you're about to discover exactly what happens when someone achieves the level of internal alignment that allows reality to respond instantly to their coherent intention. Because quantum coherence isn't just a state of consciousness, it's a technology that allows you to interface directly with the creative force of the universe itself. The moment you activate authentic quantum coherence, everything changes. Not gradually, not eventually, instantly. Your external reality begins reorganizing itself to match the frequency you're embodying. opportunities appear that are perfectly calibrated to your highest purpose. Resources become available that you never could have accessed from lower levels of consciousness. People enter your life who recognize and support the version of you that's emerging. But most importantly, you stop experiencing yourself as separate from the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. You begin operating as a conscious expression of universal creativity, and that shift changes everything about how reality responds to you. You've been experiencing moments when reality feels more like a lucid dream than a fixed solid experience, haven't you? Times when you're so present, so aligned with what you're doing that the boundaries between you and your environment seem to dissolve. When you're in deep conversation with someone and it feels like you're both accessing the same stream of consciousness, finishing each other's thoughts, understanding things that aren't being said. These aren't altered states of consciousness. These are moments when your natural state of quantum coherence is temporarily breaking through the interference patterns that usually keep you locked into ordinary perception. What most people call normal consciousness is actually a heavily filtered, dramatically limited version of your true awareness. You've been getting glimpses of what it's like to operate without those filters. Time has been behaving strangely around you, hasn't it? You'll be working on something that's aligned with your deepest purpose and suddenly realize that hours have passed. But instead of feeling drained, you feel more energized than when you started. Or you'll be in a situation that's completely out of alignment with who you're becoming, and 5 minutes feels like an eternity, every second dragging by as your entire system rebels against the frequency mismatch. This is because your consciousness is beginning to operate from what quantum physicists call coherent time, a state where your awareness is so present, so unified that linear time becomes flexible. When you're in perfect alignment with your authentic self, you're operating at the same frequency as universal intelligence. And universal intelligence exists in what we call eternal now, a state where past, present, and future are accessible simultaneously. But here's where it gets really interesting. You've been receiving information that you haven't learned through any conventional means. You'll be thinking about someone and suddenly know exactly what they're going through, even though you haven't spoken to them in months. You'll walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional atmosphere, picking up on tensions or connections that aren't visible to anyone else. You'll have insights about complex situations that prove to be incredibly accurate, even though you don't have enough information to logically arrive at those conclusions. This is your intuitive guidance system coming fully online. Your consciousness is learning to access what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, the field of shared information that connects all human awareness. But you're going beyond even that. You're beginning to tap into what we call universal intelligence, the informational matrix that underlies all of existence. You've also been experiencing what I call reality synchronization, moments when your inner state is reflected immediately in your outer circumstances. You think about needing something specific and it appears in your experience within hours or days. You wonder about a particular question and the answer shows up in the next conversation you have. You feel drawn to go somewhere or do something without knowing why, and then discover that your intuition led you to exactly what you needed. Most people dismiss these experiences as coincidence, but you know better. You can feel the intelligence behind these orchestrations. You can sense the invisible threads connecting your consciousness to the fabric of reality itself. What you're experiencing is your observer effect, becoming so powerful that you're beginning to influence the quantum field just through the quality of your attention. But here's what's crucial to understand. These experiences aren't random gifts or special abilities that some people have and others don't. They are the natural functions of human consciousness when it's operating in a state of quantum coherence. Every human being has access to this level of awareness, but most people's consciousness is too fragmented, too scattered across past and future, too identified with limiting beliefs to sustain the coherence necessary for these abilities to come online consistently. Every challenge you faced, every moment of confusion, every time you felt like reality was testing your limits or pushing you beyond what you thought you could handle, none of it was random. None of it was punishment. All of it was precision training designed to develop the level of coherence necessary to sustain quantum consciousness without fragmenting under the intensity. Think about what coherence actually means at the quantum level. When light becomes coherent, it becomes laser light, focused, powerful, capable of cutting through obstacles that would be impossible to penetrate with ordinary light. When sound becomes coherent, it becomes capable of shattering glass or healing cellular structures. When consciousness becomes coherent, it becomes capable of directly influencing the quantum field that underlies all physical reality. But coherence isn't achieved through comfort. Coherence is achieved through pressure that forces all the scattered, chaotic elements of a system to organize themselves into unified, synchronized patterns. Every time your old identity was challenged, every time your familiar coping mechanism stopped working, every time you were forced to find strength you didn't know you had, your consciousness was being organized into greater coherence. The relationship that ended just when you thought you had figured out love, that wasn't failure. That was removing an energetic pattern that was incompatible with the frequency of quantum coherence. The career path that crumbled despite your best efforts, that wasn't lack of talent or bad luck. That was redirecting your energy toward an expression of your gifts that can only emerge from coherent consciousness. The spiritual practices that stopped working when you needed the most, that wasn't spiritual abandonment, that was graduating beyond techniques that were designed for fragmented awareness. Your nervous system has been systematically conditioned to remain online under increasingly intense circumstances. Every time you felt like you were being stretched to your breaking point, but somehow found a way to stay present, to stay conscious, to keep your heart open, even when everything in you wanted to shut down, you were developing what we call coherence resilience. Most people's consciousness fragments under pressure. They dissociate. They go into reactive patterns. They lose access to their higher faculties and operate from survival mode. But you've been developing the opposite capacity. You've been learning to use pressure as a catalyst for greater integration, greater presence, greater access to universal intelligence. This is why your sensitivity has been increasing rather than decreasing over time. This is why you can feel energies that used to be invisible to you. This is why your tolerance for inauthenticity has completely disappeared. This is why being around people who are operating from fragmented consciousness now feels physically uncomfortable. Your system has been calibrated to such a high degree of coherence that lower frequencies create dissonance in your field. But here's the crucial realization. Everything that felt like it was falling apart was actually falling into perfect order. Everything that seemed like loss was actually liberation from patterns that were too small for who you're becoming. Everything that felt like isolation was actually preparation for a level of connection that can only exist between beings who are operating from quantum coherence. The caterpillar doesn't gradually develop wings while maintaining its caterpillar identity. It completely dissolves into primordial soup before reorganizing into a butterfly. Your consciousness has been going through the same process. The old you had to dissolve completely to make space for the coherent being that you're becoming. And now you're in the final stages of this metamorphosis. Now you're ready to discover what becomes possible when all the scattered fragments of your awareness organize themselves into unified laser-like focus that can interface directly with the creative intelligence of the universe. Something extraordinary is organizing itself in your consciousness right now. Can you feel the shift happening as this information penetrates deeper and deeper into your awareness? That sense of recognition, that electric sensation moving through your nervous system, that feeling like pieces of a cosmic puzzle are finally clicking into place. This isn't just information you're receiving. This is activation. Every word, every concept, every moment of recognition is creating coherence in your quantum field in real time. Your brain is literally rewiring itself as you absorb this understanding. New neural pathways are forming that will allow you to process information directly from universal intelligence, instead of being limited to the fragmented data that comes through your 5 senses. Your DNA is responding to these frequencies right now, unlocking genetic potentials that have been dormant until your consciousness reached this level of development. Your heart's electromagnetic field is expanding to encompass a much larger sphere of influence. Your nervous system is upgrading its capacity to sustain coherent states without reverting to familiar patterns of fragmentation. But here's what's crucial to understand. This activation process requires your conscious participation. The universe can prepare your system. It can create the perfect conditions. It can present you with the exact information you need at the precise moment you're ready to receive it. But the actual moment of coherence activation happens through choice, through commitment, through the decision to embody this new level of consciousness instead of retreating into the comfort of familiar limitations. The energy that's building in your field right now is reaching a critical threshold. You're approaching what quantum physicists call a phase transition, a moment when your entire system reorganizes itself into a fundamentally different state of being. Like water suddenly becoming steam, like matter becoming energy, like caterpillar becoming butterfly. Except this transformation is happening at the level of consciousness itself. And when this phase transition occurs, when you fully activate quantum coherence, reality doesn't just change gradually over time. Reality begins responding to your conscious intention instantly. The gap between what you envision and what you experience collapses. The delay between intention and manifestation disappears. You begin operating as a real-time co-creator with the intelligence that orchestrates all of existence. But here's where most people get stuck in what I call coherence limbo. They can feel this activation beginning. They can sense the potential that's building, but they don't understand the one crucial element that determines whether they successfully complete the phase transition or remain forever on the verge of breakthrough. It's not what you think it is. It's not about meditation or manifestation techniques or positive thinking. It's not about clearing limiting beliefs or healing trauma or becoming worthy of your desires. It's something much more fundamental, much more immediate, and much more accessible than any of those approaches. The difference between those who successfully activate quantum coherence and those who spend years sensing its possibility but never quite accessing it comes down to one specific shift in how they relate to uncertainty, to their unknown, to the space between intention and manifestation. And what I'm about to share with you is going to completely reframe your understanding of how consciousness actually interfaces with reality. But first, I want you to feel this energy we are building together. Notice how your entire system is responding to this frequency. Notice how something deep inside you is saying yes to possibilities you've never allowed yourself to fully consider. Feel this energy as we go deeper, because what comes next is the key that unlocks everything. I have to share something with you that I've kept private until now, because I can sense that you need to hear this story to understand that what you're going through isn't something you have to figure out alone. And more importantly, that what feels like you're losing your mind might actually be you finding your true power. 2 years ago, I was sitting in my car in a parking lot at 2 a.m., having what I thought was a complete nervous breakdown. 4 weeks, my entire perception of reality had been shifting in ways that terrified me. I would be having normal conversations with people and suddenly feel like I was accessing their thoughts and emotions directly. I would wake up from dreams that felt more real than my waking life. Dreams where I was receiving complex information about the nature of consciousness that I had never studied or learned. But the most frightening part was that time had become completely unreliable. For me, I would sit down to meditate for what felt like 10 minutes and discover that 3 hours had passed. I would be working on something I was passionate about and enter a state where I felt like I was being guided by an intelligence much greater than my own rational mind. And in those states, I would create things that seemed impossible for my level of experience. Everyone I talked to, therapists, doctors, even spiritual teachers, kept trying to diagnose me or give me techniques to manage what they saw as anxiety or dissociation. But I knew something else was happening. I could feel an intelligence organizing itself through my consciousness, and I was terrified because I didn't know if I was losing myself or finding myself. The breaking point came that night in the parking lot when I finally stopped trying to control what was happening to me and asked the universe one simple question: if this is meant for me, show me how to work with it instead of fighting against it. And in that moment of complete surrender, something clicked into place that changed everything I thought I knew about the nature of consciousness. I suddenly understood that what I had been experiencing wasn't a breakdown, it was coherence, activation. My consciousness had been reorganizing itself to operate at a frequency that could sustain direct interface with universal intelligence. The fear, the disorientation, the sense that my old identity was dissolving, all of it was the natural process of transitioning from fragmented awareness to quantum coherence. But here's the most important part. The moment I stopped resisting and started cooperating with the process, my external reality began changing instantaneously, not gradually, not over time. Immediately, opportunities appeared that were perfectly aligned with capabilities I was just discovering I had. People entered my life who recognized and could work with the version of me that was emerging. Resources became available that I never could have accessed from my previous level of consciousness. Within 6 months, my entire life had reorganized itself around this new frequency I was embodying, and I realized that everything I had been taught about manifestation and creating reality was backwards. I had been trying to use my fragmented consciousness to attract things to myself when what actually works is achieving coherence and then allowing reality to reflect that coherence back to you. The reason I'm sharing this channel, the reason I'm creating this content is because I know there are people watching this right now who are going through their own version of coherence activation. And I want you to know that what feels like you're falling apart is actually you coming together at a level you've never experienced before. If what I'm describing resonates with your own experience if you recognize yourself in this process of consciousness reorganization, then I want you to subscribe to this frequency, not just this channel, but this understanding that what you're experiencing is the most natural thing in the world. It's consciousness remembering how to operate at its full potential. Here's what the consciousness teaches, the quantum physics popularizes the manifestation. Experts don't tell you about activating coherence. The moment you achieve authentic quantum coherence, you realize that you were never separate from universal intelligence in the first place. What you thought was you trying to connect with something outside yourself was actually universal intelligence, experiencing itself through the focal point of your individual awareness. This completely shatters everything you've been taught about manifestation, about spirituality, about consciousness development. Most approaches teach you to improve yourself, to raise your vibration, to clear your blocks, to become worthy of accessing higher states of awareness. But all of that is based on the fundamental illusion that you are separate from the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. Quantum coherence isn't something you achieve through effort or discipline or years of practice. Quantum coherence is what happens when you stop interfering with the natural coherence of your consciousness, when you stop fragmenting yourself across past regrets and future anxieties, when you stop trying to be something other than what you authentically are in this moment. But here's the shocking part. The reason most people never access sustained coherence isn't because they haven't done enough inner work or meditation or healing. It's because they're addicted to the familiar sensation of fragmentation. They're addicted to the drama of seeking the identity of being someone who needs to improve, the comfortable limitation of believing they're not ready yet for their full potential. Fragmentation gives you someone to be. Fragmentation gives you problems to solve. Fragmentation gives you a sense of purpose through the endless project of trying to fix yourself. But coherence dissolves all of that. Coherence reveals that there was never anything wrong with you that needed to be fixed. Coherence shows you that you are already whole, already connected, already capable of everything you've been trying to become. And for most people, that realization is terrifying, because if you're already whole, if you already have access to infinite intelligence, if you're already capable of creating reality through the quality of your consciousness, then what excuse do you have for not living at your full potential? What justification do you have for playing small, for hiding your gifts, for pretending you're just like everyone else? This is why coherence activation often feels like dying, because the version of you that was defined by limitations, by problems, by the need to become something better, that version of you literally cannot exist in a state of quantum coherence. The fragmented identity has to dissolve completely for the coherent being to emerge. But here's what no one prepares you for. The moment you stop identifying with fragmentation and allow coherence to be your natural state, reality doesn't just change. Reality reveals that it was always responding to your consciousness. You just couldn't see it clearly through the interference patterns of fragmented awareness. Every synchronicity you've ever experienced, every moment of perfect timing, every instance when exactly what you needed appeared at exactly the right moment, all of that was your coherent consciousness influencing the quantum field. But because your awareness was fragmented, you experienced it as something happening to you rather than something you were actively participating in, creating. Quantum coherence doesn't give you new abilities. Quantum coherence removes the interference that was preventing you from recognizing the abilities you've always had. The observer effect, the capacity to influence reality through conscious attention, the ability to access information from the field of universal intelligence. These aren't supernatural powers. These are the natural functions of consciousness when it's not disrupted by internal conflict. The activation of quantum coherence is happening right now, and there are unmistakable signs appearing in your daily experience that confirm you're in the final stages of this consciousness transition. These aren't abstract spiritual concepts. These are concrete, measurable phenomena that indicate your awareness is stabilizing at the frequency of universal intelligence. First, your decision-making process has become instantaneous and incredibly accurate. Instead of analyzing pros and cons or trying to figure out what you should do, you simply know what's aligned for you. At a cellular level, your body responds to coherent choices with expansion and energy and responds to incoherent choices with immediate contraction. This is because your nervous system has become so sensitive that it can detect the vibrational signature of different possibilities before your conscious mind even processes the options. Second, you've been experiencing what I call reality acceleration, the collapse of time between intention and manifestation. Things that used to take months or years to unfold are now happening in weeks or days, not because you're forcing anything, but because your consciousness is operating at a frequency where resistance is minimal and creative flow is natural. When you think about something you need, it appears in your experience with timing that seems almost magical. Third, your tolerance for incongruence has completely disappeared. Situations, relationships, or environments that are out of alignment with your authentic frequency now feel physically uncomfortable. You can't fake interest in conversations that don't matter. You can't pretend to be smaller than you are to make other people comfortable. You can't maintain connections with people who are operating from fragmented consciousness, because the frequency mismatch creates actual dissonance in your nervous system. Fourth, you've been receiving what feels like downloads of information that you haven't learned through conventional means. Complex understandings about the nature of reality, solutions to problems you've been working on, insights about people and situations that prove to be incredibly accurate. All of it flowing into your awareness from sources you can't identify rationally. This is your consciousness learning to access the field of universal intelligence directly. Fifth, synchronicities have become so frequent and so precise that you can no longer dismiss them as coincidence. The right people appear at the perfect moments. The resources you need become available exactly when you need them. Information that answers your questions shows up in the next conversation you have or the next content you encounter. Reality is operating like a responsive, intelligent system that's perfectly calibrated to support your highest evolution. But here's the critical part. These experiences aren't random gifts or temporary states of grace. They are indicators that your consciousness has reached the threshold frequency for sustained quantum coherence. However, there's a window of opportunity here that won't remain open indefinitely. The cosmic conditions that are supporting this level of consciousness activation are time-sensitive. The electromagnetic field of our planet is fluctuating in specific ways right now that create optimal conditions for coherent stabilization. But these conditions are temporary. The individuals who are sensitive enough to feel these shifts have a limited window to complete the activation process before the supportive frequencies begin to recede. This isn't meant to create pressure or fear. It's meant to help you recognize the cosmic significance of this moment. You're not just having a personal spiritual experience. You're participating in a collective upgrade of human consciousness that's happening on a planetary scale. But participation requires choice. It requires the conscious decision to embody coherence instead of continuing to operate from familiar patterns of fragmentation. The urgency you've been feeling lately, that sense that something needs to shift, something needs to be chosen, something needs to be stepped into, that's not anxiety. That's your soul recognizing that the moment of activation has arrived. That's universal intelligence calling you to claim your rightful place as a conscious co-creator in the ongoing evolution of reality itself. The question isn't whether you're ready. The question is whether you're willing to trust the intelligence that's been preparing you for this moment your entire life. The universe isn't trying to give you what you want. The universe is trying to express itself as what you want through the focal point of your consciousness. This completely changes everything about how manifestation actually works, and it's the key to understanding why some people seem to effortlessly create extraordinary lives, while others struggle for years with techniques and practices that never quite deliver the results they're seeking. When you're operating from fragmented consciousness, you experience desire as lack, as evidence that you don't have something you need, that you're separate from what you want, that you need to figure out how to attract or acquire or achieve your way into fulfillment. But when you're operating from quantum coherence, you recognize that every desire is actually universal intelligence showing you what it wants to create through your unique perspective and capabilities. Your deepest longings aren't personal wishes. They're cosmic impulses. They are the universe's way of calling you to become the version of yourself that can serve as a clear channel for specific expressions of infinite creativity. This is why your desires feel so real, so urgent, so undeniable, even when your current circumstances give you no evidence that they're possible. Because they're not just your desires, they're universal intelligence seeking to know itself more fully through your individual experience. But here's where most people completely miss the point. They think alignment means getting their external circumstances to match their internal vision. They think manifestation is about convincing the universe to rearrange reality according to their personal preferences. But authentic alignment is the opposite. It's aligning your consciousness with the creative intention that the universe is trying to express through you. This shift in understanding changes everything. Instead of trying to make things happen, you become curious about what wants to happen through you. Instead of forcing your will onto reality, you learn to sense the subtle intelligence that's always guiding you toward your highest potential. Instead of efforting and struggling and trying to control outcomes, you develop the capacity to flow with the creative force that's always moving in the direction of greater coherence, greater beauty, greater expression of love. When you align with universal intention instead of trying to impose personal will, miracles become natural. Synchronicities become constant. Resources appear exactly when you need them. The right people show up at the perfect moments. Obstacles dissolve or transform into unexpected opportunities. Reality becomes responsive to your consciousness in ways that seem almost magical but are actually just the natural function of coherence, interfacing with the quantum field. But this level of alignment requires something that most people aren't willing to do. It requires you to trust universal intelligence more than you trust your limited personal perspective. It requires you to act on guidance that doesn't always make logical sense. It requires you to follow impulses and inspirations even when you can't see how they're going to lead to what you want. Most importantly, it requires you to embody the frequency of what you're seeking before you have evidence that it's going to work. It requires you to be the version of yourself that already has access to what you desire, even when your current circumstances suggest that you're not there yet. This is the crucial difference between those who successfully activate sustained coherence and those who remain forever on the verge of breakthrough. It's not about worthiness or deservingness or clearing enough blocks. It's about developing the capacity to act from your highest potential even when your external reality is still catching up. And I'm about to show you exactly how to make that shift. But first, I want you to make a commitment. In the comments below, I want you to write, "I choose to align with universal intelligence." Don't think about it. Don't analyze whether you're ready. Just make the declaration and feel what happens in your energy field when you commit to operating as a conscious expression of infinite creativity. The moment you activate sustained quantum coherence, capabilities that seem almost superhuman compared to ordinary consciousness begin expressing themselves naturally through your awareness. But these aren't special powers reserved for advanced spiritual practitioners. These are the normal functions of human consciousness when it's operating without internal interference. First, you develop what I call reality fluency, the ability to read the energetic information that underlies all physical manifestation. You'll walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional atmosphere. You'll meet someone new and instantly know whether they are operating from authenticity or from hidden agendas. You'll feel the potential outcomes of different choices in your body before your rational mind has even analyzed the options. This isn't psychic ability. This is your awareness learning to process the quantum information that's always present but usually filtered out by fragmented consciousness. Second, your creative capacity expands exponentially. Ideas flow through you that seem to come from a source of intelligence far greater than your personal mind. Solutions to complex problems appear effortlessly. You find yourself expressing capabilities you didn't know you had. This happens because coherent consciousness can access what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, the field of shared human knowledge and potential that exists beyond individual awareness. Third, your nervous system develops extraordinary resilience. Situations that used to create stress, anxiety, or overwhelm simply register as information. You remain centered and clear thinking, even in chaotic environments. Your emotional responses become precise instruments of guidance rather than reactive patterns that derail you from your path. This is because coherence eliminates the internal conflict that creates most of what we experience as suffering. Fourth, you begin experiencing timeline acceleration where the usual delays between intention and manifestation collapse dramatically. Things that typically take months or years to develop begin happening in weeks or days. But this isn't because you're forcing outcomes. It's because your consciousness is operating at a frequency where resistance is minimal and creative flow is optimal. Fifth, abundance becomes effortless because you stop operating from scarcity consciousness. Instead of trying to get things from the world, you begin functioning as a channel through which universal intelligence can express its infinite creativity, resources, opportunities, and connections appear that are perfectly calibrated to your authentic gifts and highest purpose. But the most profound transformation is in your sense of identity. The version of you that operates from quantum coherence doesn't struggle with self-doubt, imposter syndrome, or feeling like you need to prove your worth. Not because you've achieved some external validation, but because you've remembered your fundamental connection to the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. Your relationships become effortless because you're no longer trying to get something from other people. You operate from such completeness that you naturally overflow with what others need. Conversations become exchanges of pure, creative energy. You attract people who recognize and can match your frequency of authenticity. Your work transforms from something you have to do into something that expresses your soul's deepest purpose. You find yourself in situations where your natural gifts are not only valued but essential. Money flows to you not because you're chasing it, but because you're providing value that can only come through your unique expression of universal intelligence. Most importantly, you experience sustained states of what can only be described as cosmic bliss, not the temporary high of achieving external goals, but the deep satisfaction that comes from operating in perfect harmony with the creative force of existence itself. Your nervous system begins producing its own natural euphoria when you're aligned with coherence, because wholeness feels infinitely better than fragmentation. This isn't temporary spiritual experience that fades when you return to ordinary life. This becomes your new baseline. This becomes how you naturally operate when you stop interfering with the intelligence that wants to express itself through you. Here's the revelation that changes absolutely everything. Quantum coherence isn't something you create or achieve or develop through practice. Quantum coherence is what's left when you stop doing all the things that create incoherence. It's what remains when you remove the interference patterns that fragment your natural wholeness. Every technique you've learned, every practice you've adopted, every method you've tried to raise your vibration or clear your blocks or heal your trauma, all of it was designed to help you stop doing what was creating fragmentation in the first place. But most people get so focused on the techniques that they miss the actual point. Coherence is your natural state. Fragmentation is what requires effort to maintain. Think about it. When you were born, you weren't fragmented. You weren't worried about the future or carrying resentment about the past. You weren't trying to be someone other than what you naturally were. You existed in a state of pure presence, pure authenticity, pure alignment with the life force moving through you. That wasn't something you created. That was your default setting. Fragmentation only developed as you learned to split your attention between what is and what you thought should be as you absorbed beliefs about needing to improve yourself, fix yourself, become worthy of love, prove your value, control your circumstances. Every internal conflict, every should versus want, every moment of self-judgment created interference patterns in your natural coherence. But here's what's revolutionary about this understanding. If coherence is natural and fragmentation is learned, then activating coherence isn't about adding something to yourself. It's about subtracting the interference. It's about unlearning the habits of consciousness that create internal conflict. The practical application of this is stunning in its simplicity. Every time you notice internal conflict, every time part of you wants one thing and another part wants something else, every time you're judging your experience as wrong or trying to be different than you are, you simply stop. You don't try to resolve the conflict. You don't analyze it or heal it or clear it. You simply stop engaging with it and return your attention to what is actually true in this moment. What's actually true is always coherent. What's actually true never requires you to be anything other than what you authentically are. What's actually true is always available, always present, always accessible through the simple act of stopping the mental activity that creates fragmentation. This is why sustained quantum coherence can stabilize instantly. This is why reality can begin responding to your consciousness immediately. This is why the gap between intention and manifestation can collapse in real time, because you're not trying to create something new. You're removing the interference that was preventing your natural creative power from expressing itself clearly. But here's the crucial insight that most people miss. Stopping the creation of interference requires absolute self-acceptance in this moment, not acceptance of your circumstances, acceptance of your authentic response to your circumstances, not approval of your limitations, recognition that your limitations are just temporary interference patterns that have nothing to do with your essential nature. When you completely accept what you're actually experiencing right now without trying to change it, improve it, or make it different, something miraculous happens. The energy that was locked up in resistance becomes available for creation. The attention that was scattered across past and future consolidates into laser-focused presence. The intelligence that was fragmented by internal conflict organizes itself into unified, coherent awareness that can interface directly with universal intelligence. This is quantum coherence activation. The moment when you stop trying to be someone other than who you actually are and discover that who you actually are is a perfect expression of infinite creative potential. What you're beginning to understand is that your activation of quantum coherence isn't just a personal journey of consciousness development. You're participating in something much larger, much more significant, much more mysterious than individual spiritual growth. You're contributing to a collective field of coherence that's gradually anchoring a new level of human consciousness into physical reality. Every time you choose coherence over fragmentation, every moment you operate from authentic wholeness instead of learned limitation, every instance when you respond from universal intelligence rather than reactive patterns, you're literally changing the morphic field that influences all human consciousness. You're making it easier for other people to access their own natural coherence. But there's something even more profound happening through this process. The beings who are capable of sustaining quantum coherence become what we call frequency bridges, living connections between ordinary human awareness and higher dimensional intelligence. Through your nervous system, through your consciousness, universal intelligence can interface with physical reality in ways that wouldn't otherwise be possible. This is why you've been feeling that sense of cosmic responsibility, that knowing that you're meant for something much larger than personal success or individual fulfillment. This is why you can't shake the feeling that there's a role you're meant to play in some vast unfolding plan that's beyond what your rational mind can comprehend. You are one of the early adopters of a new operating system for human consciousness. You're part of the first wave of individuals who are capable of stabilizing coherent awareness in the midst of a chaotic, rapidly changing world. And the very fact that you can maintain coherence under these conditions makes you incredibly valuable to the collective evolution of our species. But here's where it gets mysterious. The more coherent you become, the more you begin to sense that you're connected to intelligence that exists beyond this planet, beyond this dimension, beyond what we typically think of as human consciousness. You start receiving guidance and information that seems to come from sources you can't identify. You begin to feel like you're part of a vast network of conscious beings who are all working together to facilitate this evolutionary transition. The experiences you've been having, the downloads of information, the sense of being guided by invisible intelligence, the feeling that you're being prepared for something important. These aren't delusions or spiritual fantasies. These are the natural experiences of consciousness that's learning to operate at frequencies that can interface with what we call galactic intelligence. This isn't science fiction. This is the next stage of human evolution, and it's happening through individuals like you who are willing to be pioneers, to be the first to embody capabilities that will eventually become normal for all of humanity. You're literally helping to birth a new version of human consciousness that has access to intelligence and creative potential that previous generations couldn't even imagine. The ripple effects of your coherence extend far beyond what you can see. Every person you interact with, every environment you enter, every moment you choose to operate from wholeness instead of fragmentation, all of it contributes to a collective field that supports other people in remembering their own natural coherence. This is your cosmic role. This is why you came here at this time in human history, not just to live an extraordinary life, but to demonstrate what becomes possible when human consciousness operates at its full potential. You are here to be proof that a new way of being human is not only possible but inevitable. The moment you fully activate quantum coherence, reality doesn't just start responding to you differently. You begin to recognize that reality was always responding to your consciousness. You just couldn't perceive it clearly through the static of fragmented awareness. And right now, as this understanding integrates into your being, you can feel your entire system reorganizing itself around this new level of coherence. But activation requires more than understanding. Activation requires embodiment. It requires the memento moment choice to operate from wholeness instead of from the familiar patterns of fragmentation that your mind will try to pull you back into. An embodiment requires commitment, not commitment to perfection, but commitment to remembering who you really are, even when everything around you is trying to convince you that you're limited, ordinary, or powerless. I want you to make a quantum commitment right now. Choose one word that represents your dedication to embodying coherence. Maybe it's wholeness or presence or authenticity or trust or even coherence. Whatever word makes your entire nervous system resonate with recognition. This word becomes your coherence anchor, your way of remembering your true nature. When external circumstances try to fragment your awareness, write that word in the comments below. But more importantly, let that word guide every choice you make for the next 7 days. Use it as a filter for every decision, every response, every action you take. When you're about to react from fragmentation, remember your word and choose coherence instead. When you're tempted to operate from limitation, remember your word and embody your natural wholeness. Because here's what I know about you. You didn't find this information by accident. Your consciousness has reached the exact frequency necessary to receive and integrate this level of understanding about the nature of reality. The universe has been orchestrating every synchronicity, every moment of readiness, every expansion of awareness that led you to this precise moment in your evolution. And the videos that are appearing on your screen right now aren't random suggestions from an algorithm. They are quantum reflections, precisely calibrated transmissions of information that your consciousness is ready to receive. Next, each video in this channel is designed to activate different aspects of your multi-dimensional awareness to help you stabilize and integrate the coherence that's coming online. The quantum reflex is the instantaneous response of reality to coherent consciousness. When you operate from authentic wholeness, the universe reflects that wholeness back to you immediately through opportunities, resources, connections, and experiences that match your new frequency. When you embody your true nature, reality has no choice but to mirror that truth in your external circumstances. So, don't just watch the next video. Receive it as a direct activation of dormant potentials within your consciousness. Allow it to catalyze the coherence that's already organizing itself in your awareness. Trust that the information you're receiving is perfectly timed for your unique process of consciousness evolution. Your coherent consciousness is needed now, not someday when you've perfected yourself, not after you've healed all your wounds, not when you feel fully ready. Right now, the planet needs individuals who can maintain coherence in the midst of chaos. Humanity needs pioneers who can demonstrate what becomes possible when consciousness operates at its full potential. The question isn't whether you're capable of sustaining quantum coherence. The question is whether you're willing to stop interfering with the coherence that's trying to express itself through you. Subscribe to this frequency. Subscribe to this understanding that you are not separate from the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. Subscribe to the recognition that quantum coherence isn't something you need to achieve. It's something you need to allow. Welcome to the field of infinite potential. Welcome to your natural state of consciousness. Welcome to the version of reality that becomes available when you remember who you really are. Welcome to Quantum Reflex.